Welcome to the WRI Ross Center Prize for Cities Awards. Thank you for joining us. My name is Femi Oke. I am your host for the next 1 hour. In that 1 hour, you will see and learn about 5 brilliant initiatives that are having an impact, that are transforming the cities with which they are in. So, the whole idea of the Prize for Cities is that you look at these finalists, you think, wow, that is amazing. We should be doing that, or we could be doing it. And that is the whole idea, the ethos behind the Prize for Cities. The very first prize cycle, was back in 2018 to 2019 and set up to really recognize sustainable urban transformation. The recipient of that first prize in 2019 will be coming back to tell us what difference that prize has made. It is so nice to see you. If we were all in a room together, there would be about 1,000 of us all joining together, all leaning in to look at how sustainable urban transformation is actually happening around the world. A couple of things that you can do to be part of this award ceremony, because it is an interactive award ceremony. On the page in which you see me, there's a comments and there's a question section. If you have a comment or a question about any of the projects, some of the WRI Ross Center team are right in there with you. They will answer your questions, your queries as the award ceremony continues. It's one way it is interactive. Also, you can use the hashtag Prize for Cities and let us know what you think about the projects, what you are doing around the world as well. Always interested in that. And then on Twitter, of course, at WRI Ross Cities is the Twitter handle that you can use to, again, be part of this award ceremony as we're all in this together. So our very first stop is going to the WRI Ross Center for Sustainable Cities in Washington, D.C. to meet the Global Director, Ani Dasgupta. Ani, what an exciting awards ceremony, and you get to kick it off. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Femi. We are so excited to share with you this fantastic project. Here at WRI Ross Center, we work with dozens of partners in more than 100 cities around the world to shift the way cities are built, managed, and experienced. We believe that integrated solutions can transform cities into thriving, resilient, low-carbon places that are good for people and the planet. But as the world urbanizes, it's clear we have a lot of work to do. We need new ways of building cities, to learn faster, to find new solutions, to move beyond incremental change, to transformative change. That's why in 2018, we launched the Prize for Cities. The prize aims to identify the global leaders in urban transformation, to celebrate them, to amplify their lessons learned, so others can follow. When we started the second cycle of the prize in February 2020, we of course had no idea that the COVID pandemic was just around the corner. Today, the impact of this global tragedy have come into focus. Urban inequality is starker than ever. It is clear we must be more committed to making our communities more equitable and sustainable in the long term, to truly make cities work for everyone. Even in such disruptive times, we received over 260 submissions from more than 50 countries for the cycle's theme, Inclusive Cities for a Changing Climate. Through a methodical process, we selected 5 outstanding finalists from 4 continents. Now, our independent jury of leading urban thinkers have chosen one to receive the $250,000 grand prize. You will get to know each of our fantastic finalists through the eyes of our jurors as well as in their own words. Each of this project is a winner. Indeed, each runner-up also receives $25,000. All 5 show us that meaningful, positive, lasting change is possible. And they remind us that even in times of crisis, especially in the times of crisis, the work of urban transformation must go on.
Thank you very much, Ani Dasgupta. Ani will be coming back and joining us a little bit later in our awards ceremony. So our 5 finalists come from all over the world: India, Kenya, the United Kingdom, Argentina, Mexico. You will get to learn about those projects one by one as we unpack them, as the project leads talk to you as well. One thing that is really important for us all to remember is that transforming your city, it doesn't have to be done by city officials. Communities can do it, businesses, NGOs, universities. Everybody can have an impact on sustainably transforming the city. Doesn't have to be your city officials. You're about to find that out. We sent the Prize for Cities film crew around to all of the finalist cities, and this is what they brought back. Take a look.
We are aiming for a social transformation
where the community is motivated to take actions themselves,
to collaborate and effect change,
and build up resilience of a space that people can defend as their own.
Let's work with our community, with our neighbors, where we can solve the common issues of our life.
We need to do this critically for our future and for the future of our children.
If a woman is empowered, they bring about an intergenerational change.
Mi sueño es que todos los espacios verdes que todavía está quedando se pueda hacer realidad y que se pueda cultivar.
This work is transformational. This work is saving lives to ensure that everyone can thrive.
What do you think so far? Hashtag Prize for Cities. Share your thoughts with us. So if you go to prizeforcities.org, you will see the jury. They are impressive visionaries, thought leaders. So they all came together to help us work out who the finalists should be and eventually who should be the Prize for Cities winner 2021. So the jury has to be good because they had to look at over 200 entries from more than 50 countries. And when they started deliberating, they were thinking, what do you think when you think about cities? That was a starting point for them. And this is what they came up with. Take a look.
My name is Rahul Mehrotra, and when I think of cities, I think of the word flux. We aspire to make our cities static, stable, and predictable entities. But really, what surrounds us today in the world is flux, climate change, the movement of people, demographic shifts, an uncertain condition. And so flux is something we have to make central to our imagination of cities.
The one word that comes to mind when I think about cities in the future is metamorphosis. Why? Because cities are growing at an enormous pace. They are transforming even on a daily basis. There are new ideas, innovation, and a lot of dynamism in cities.
Hi, I'm Steve Strungen. I'm a jury member. And when I think of one word that describes cities over the next 15 years, it's density, because that's what we're going to have to achieve.
What comes to mind when I think about planning for our cities over the next decade is you don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one.
One word that sums up cities in the next decade, it's green. Why? Well, cities are becoming more sustainable, and that trend will continue.
Cities are where the action is going to be over the next decade. Action on poverty, on climate change, on crisis prevention and recovery, on building a just, green, and inclusive world.
The word that I think of when I think about cities over the next decade is pioneering. Because I think cities, with all their creativity, their diversity, collaboration, their progressive innovation, is where the opportunity to build the green and just societies of the future is happening first.
The phrase I have in mind when I think of cities is the power of absorbing informality. I say this because if we want to transform cities, we have to acknowledge, embrace informality so that we produce inclusive and just solutions.
When I think about the word innovation, as it is in cities where the most impactful inventions have been developed in modern history, I also remember that Socrates said that necessity is the mother of invention. So given the exponential vulnerability that cities are facing around the world, it is there where quick and meaningful action needs to take place, helping to improve society as a whole.
When I think of cities, one word comes to mind: change. With the pandemic, the cities will never be the same again, but it is up to us to transform them and make them more inclusive.
Every one of the finalists that you will see in our awards ceremony had the same mission. It was bring us a project or initiative that addressed climate change and also inequalities and was also making an impact. So remember that as you watch all of the finalist presentations. They will be introduced by a jury member. You will see a film about the actual project itself and then hear from the project lead. We start in Kenya.
This project for Kibera, which is part of a huge informal settlement, impressed me for several reasons. First of all, it really touches the lives directly of 125,000 people within that community. It improves flood protection, service access, and for 10,000, it's delivering affordable clean water. But there are other dimensions as well. It was an initiative some 13 years ago by a group of Harvard students, and working with the community. This, unusually, is a bottom-up approach, an initiative by the community. Put all those reasons together, and for me, it's very, very impressive indeed.
What KDI really stands for, I would say, is really around the productive public space. How can you provide some economic sustainability, but also how can you provide environmental sustainability and really begin to build up resilience of a space that people can't defend as their own.
So KDI has created a number of sites. There are 11 in total, and they spread across Kibera.
The sites have solutions that cut across from sanitation facilities to gathering spaces, open spaces, play spaces for kids, and also solutions to environmental challenges such as flooding.
Tuko trust yenye tuko na trust kabisa kutoka kwa KDI kwa sababu most ya projects zenye tunafanya hapa ama programs zenye tunafanya hapa sio hao wanatujisaidia, sisi ndio tunaamua.
This work is transformational, this work is saving lives, and this work is what needs to happen to ensure that Kibera is a place where children, women, and everyone else can thrive.
When KDI's co-founders started this project, it was because they kept seeing a big disconnect in the way design is typically practiced. On one hand, design has such a great transformative promise, since it's so well suited to address complex challenges. But on the other hand, it typically needs a client who comes to a designer with a clearly articulated objective and the budget and the resources to carry out the project. Seeing an opportunity to use design to carry out urban transformation, but not satisfied to wait for a client to request design services, and after all, injustice won't wait, KDI's co-founders, working and learning with communities, established a new process where we would identify the challenge, in this case, climate change and urban inequality, and then we would identify a way to make it happen. So what started as one productive public space has since expanded into a growing network of 11 such spaces, transforming not only the landscape of Kibera, but also its economy, its public health infrastructure, climate risk preparedness, and social equity.
This finalist from Mexico stood out to us for how it tackles one of the most difficult urban problems, which is to reverse urban sprawl. Densifying existing cities is one of the hardest things, and it can take a long time. There's often resistance due to perceptions that greater density may affect livability. In fact, well-planned densification is a recipe to greatly improve livability. In this case, a renowned university decided to stay in the area, which it had been based in for decades after waves of violence combined with rapid urban expansion and car-centric development had driven people away from the city's central districts. This was a brave choice. In staying, the university proactively reached out to and subsequently invested in its local community. It brought a diverse group of actors together to jointly rethink the district's future. In doing so, it rewrote the urban design process for how the city as a whole used public space as a foundation and showed that good quality urban design will attract both people and private investment to the area, lower crime, and help revitalize existing urban areas. Distrito Tech enabled people to shape the urban landscape and its infrastructure rather than merely being shaped by it, while creating trust in the city. Fundamentally, Distrito Tech shows us that we shouldn't be measuring success by how far away we get from our communities, but how we can get people to stay and rebuild community capital.
There was this big tragedy with two of our students coming out of campus and being killed in a crossfire. And that was a very tragic moment for the institution, obviously for the city, and it required that we think different about our position within the city.
Should we think about moving our campus to a different location? Or should we think about, no, let's stay here, but if we do that, that will come with a commitment of transformation, not of the campus, but rather of the surrounding areas.
We are aiming for a social transformation. Infrastructure has this ability to shape us, but we also can shape the infrastructure.
Privilegiemos espacios amplios para poder tener una movilidad diferente al automóvil. Tenemos mayores áreas de absorción en las áreas verdes que se conforman y que se dan a la ciudadanía para que haya espacios más dignos y de inclusión.
We are reclaiming the streets for people and getting art and getting community programs and parks and gathering spaces and the future that we want.
The city and tech lived a crisis that touched us profoundly in different ways. We moved to action in order to reshape our reality and to start a conscious process and tackle the origin of the problems we were facing. We wonder if we should relocate the campus or stay and launch an initiative that had an impact on the deepest causes and transform the environment. We were convinced that the response to insecurity was not simply enhanced security measures, but above all, truly engaging with our neighbors. That initiative crystallized in what we now call Distrito Tech.
Out of 3.5 billion people that live in cities, 1 billion people live in slums. Informal settlements are a very important part of what's happening in the world. And these communities get the brunt of what's happening with climate. This finalist demonstrates the remarkable breadth and complexity of solutions that emerge from an inclusive process when different stakeholder groups innovate together. As a jury, we were also very drawn to the notice and to see the importance of home-based work as being absolutely critical to the productivity of the city. And we saw an impressive balance being struck between political and economic empowerment, both of which are happening here. Building local knowledge and action so that people can understand climate change, but also influencing policy, and thereby getting the city as a whole to change their approach. More than anything, what we see in this finalist from Ahmedabad is that new approaches to very well-known challenges can be found, especially when you involve people in the process of finding the solution. Bottom-up climate action is a critical thing that needs to happen, and it is possible to turn climate victims into climate champions.
We developed a poor women-led model to reduce inequalities caused due to climate change by empowering the women to take a systems thinking approach to climate change. Pro-poor technologies were developed, climate financing was undertaken, and policy influence was also undertaken.
અમે વિકાસીની બહેનોને સ્નેક એન્ડ લેડર ગેમ, હિસ્ટોગ્રામ, મોઝર ફ્રેમવર્ક જેવી એન્ટરટેન પદ્ધતિથી અમે લોકોને ટ્રેનિંગ આપીએ છીએ અને જેથી એ ટ્રેનિંગ બહેનો સરળતાથી સમજી શકે છે અને વિસ્તારમાં જઈને બીજા બહેનોને ટ્રેન કરી શકે છે.
જળવાયુમાં અમને તાપમાન જેમ કે પતરા અથવા ધાબાવાળી સીટ હોય તો એની પર એ શું કહેવાય વ્હાઇટ પેન્ટ છે એનાથી આપણે ઠંડા ઉનાળામાં એનો ફાયદો લઈ શકીએ છીએ. પછી ઝાડ વાવવા વધારે ભરાવાથી મચ્છરનો ફેલાવો થતો હોય, મચ્છરથી જે મચ્છરજન્ય રોગો થતા હોય, મલેરિયા છે, ટાઇફોઇડ, તાવ, એ બધા રોગોમાં પણ એમને રાહત થઈ.
If a woman is empowered, the entire benefits of the empowerment goes to the family, especially to their children, and they bring about an intergenerational change.
મને દરેક કામમાં મને બહુ જ ખુશી થાય છે. હવે હું પણ વિચાર કરું કે મારા જેવી બેન બીજી ઊભી થાય તેની હું પ્રયત્ન કરું છું.
Hello, my name is Bijal Brahmbhatt and I am the director of Mahila Housing Trust. It's a well-known fact that urban inequalities are enhanced due to the negative impact of climate change. What our program has done is that it has shown that poor women, when equipped with scientific knowledge and relevant technologies, can devise pro-poor climate resilient solutions, and they can assess their own vulnerabilities. It has also shown that they can influence governance planning and ensure locally adaptation practices. Our program has also shown that women's empowerment, sustainable development, and climate resilience are not mutually exclusive goals. Our project speaks to the nationally determined contributions of India, and it has also responded to the United Nations urgent call for action to reduce inequalities. It also illustrates that well-managed urbanization is a powerful tool for sustainable development.
You're watching the WRI Ross Center Prize for Cities Awards. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your comments. I've been looking at your comments. I love this whole creative process of upliftment for cities. Thank you. That's part of the reason why we're all here, to celebrate the transformation that cities can go through when you're looking at sustainable urban development. All right, so back in 2019 was when the very first Prize for Cities was awarded, and it went to a project known as SARSI. That is an acronym, so let me tell you what that acronym actually means. School Area Road Safety Assessments and Improvements. Basically, across the African continent, road accidents are so deadly, some of the most deadly in the whole of the world, particularly with school children. And that is what SARSI aimed to combat. Let's check in on the recipient 2 years later to see how they're doing. We go to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania to do that.
My name is Simon Kalolo. I represent an international organization called AMENT, which works across the world to prevent road traffic injuries. And I'm here on behalf of the entire team to say thank you for receiving the prize back in 2019. And truly, we appreciate that. And We have seen how important that prize has been to us on the ground in countries where we work, more than 10 African countries where we've been working so far, and with local governments, central government, members of the community and other stakeholders. We believe that receiving the prize was such a milestone, and we know that through that we have remained focused. And I would just want to take this opportunity to congratulate all the finalists this year, and I wish you all the best, and I hope that one of you will indeed win this and continue to make the difference in the areas that we work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. The Prize for Cities Awards, the top prize is $250,000. The finalists will each get $25,000. It is a tough decision-making process. So I wanted to take you behind the scenes of how that process actually pans out, how that works. So I'm going to bring back Annie Dasgupta and hand over to Annie.
The jury is one of the most important part of the prize evaluation process because they independently decide who will receive the grand prize. There are 11 jurors, architects and planners, real estate developers, activists, leaders of major international urban agencies, NGOs, all of them leaders in their field. And many of them wear several hats at the same time. We gathered everyone together, virtually of course this year, to discuss each of the finalists in great detail. It's my honor to introduce two of our Prize for Cities jurors, Femi Oke, Senior Partner at Southbridge Group and CEO of Southbridge Investment. Franny has been working on development finance all her life, first at the World Bank and then at the African Development Bank. And Majora Carter, CEO of Majora Carter Group, someone who believes in building cities from the ground up. Majora recently joined Groundswell. Franny and Majora, welcome. I'm delighted to have a few minutes with you. In this year's process, Franny, you're doing this for the second time, and Majora, you're doing the first time. What was surprising for you? What did you learn from our 5 finalists? Majora, you go first.
I wasn't surprised at the fact that so many of the great ideas came from communities that in some ways have been written off, as places where great things don't happen. I'm a huge believer and proponent, of the talent is always in those communities, and that's where we should look first for the answers to and solutions to the problems that we have, in cities and in life in general. And it was super hard to actually go through the entire list to choose because everyone was they were just hitting their marks and being incredibly thoughtful and deliberate about what they wanted to see happen in their future.
Thanks, Majora. Franny?
It was very interesting to me to see the diversity of proposals that came from all over the world. And the surprising factor there was that it didn't matter whether these were cities in poorer economies or neighborhoods that were not particularly wealthy financially, or more advanced and older cities, but the innovations really came from everywhere. But maybe the last comment I wanted to make is I was also surprised and I learned a lot that some of these spot innovations could actually be scaled up within the same cities or transferred and be useful learning for other cities. So I learned a lot about the process of innovation. And the second one is the degree to which some of these proposals had system-wide change, ecosystem-wide change, and the fact that a small idea can grow very big and spread.
Thank you to both of you for sharing these reflections. Now, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what inclusive urban transformation means to you in this unique moment for cities. COVID has upended almost everything about the way cities work. It has made inequality worse in many ways everywhere in the world. Indeed, many of our finalists have adapted their work towards pandemic relief, and it has been inspiring to see their leadership in action. And we are seeing some cities experiment with bold new vision for the future. Majora, something you said really resonated with me about resilience, how cities have to be more resilient and how communities, especially poorer communities across everywhere, not just where you live, every city in the world,
has been far worse affected by the pandemic. Do you think we are learning our lesson? Do you think your city, New York City, will learn the lesson of how to be more resilient and how to focus more on equity as we go forward?
We have a mayoral election coming up. And so I do hope that whoever is elected looks back in particular at the last year and says, and understands just that it was inequality that made the issues in New York City's poor neighborhoods as bad as they were. But there's a part of me that's not totally convinced that will happen regardless of who's mayor. But what I am utterly convinced about is the fact that within those communities, there are always people and resources that are there to support them, who are actually building from the inside out. And I think once our administrations and all the powers that be can actually see that and really embrace that, that's when I think the world is going to change. And I think our cities everywhere are going to be better for it. And it was one of the reasons why I was so inspired by the work that all the folks within the Prize for Cities competition did, because they just showed, on a small scale, large scale, long term, shorter term, just how powerful actually depending on, people in their own communities to have the ability to support themselves and really think about the long-term, health of the entire city by focusing, on projects that were supportive.
You're so right, Majora, and we have seen this across the world. Maybe the lesson is for cities to more directly support community initiatives systematically and encourage that practice. Franny, something you said about innovation that is so much the heart of the prize process and the reason we have set up the prize. In this year, innovation has been, it's been amazing innovation across cities and inventing new ways of moving around, bicycle, helping people. I want to hear from you. This is something you have thought about a lot throughout your career. How can we learn from this lesson, and how can we make sure that cities across the world are learning from this?
I think the Prize for Cities is one way in which we can learn about those innovations, because the competition process always brings out the best ideas, and by looking through the various submissions and judging and comparing and benchmarking, we have a chance to uncover a lot of innovation that is going on. So I hope that the Prize for Cities continues and that it allows us to learn even more. The second way in which we learn is by engaging now with these digital platforms that are very creative in terms of bringing in new ideas and bringing them to a level of knowing which is global, and finding a way to source those ideas in a more regular way, I think would be also a good opportunity. And I believe there's an important role for associations and institutes, for example, centers that focus on study of cities, associations of cities, and networks that bring together ideas from various levels. Those are very important, and there are quite a few examples out there that can continue to be leveraged for ideas to travel.
Franny and Majora, it was wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Anne. It was a pleasure, and very nice to see Majora once again.
Thank you for having me.
That link you just saw on your screen will take you to prizeforcities.org and onto a special tab about COVID. It's not just a general tab about COVID. It is about COVID approaches, pandemic approaches from finalists of the Prize for Cities Awards. So go and check it out. I highly recommend it, how their amazing, innovative, transformational work is being applied to our global pandemic. Now, if you're keeping count, you know that we have met 3 finalists And there are 2 more to go. We are stretching out the anticipation. Who is going to walk away with Prize for Cities Award 2021? We're not going to find out quite yet, because first we have to go to the United Kingdom.
It is with great pleasure that I share with you the London Ultra Low Emission Zone project. Energy consumption for transportation is on average the 2nd largest source of GHG emissions globally. However, in some countries, it is the largest source of emissions. Due to its chemical composition and close exposure to the people, it increases the vulnerability towards illnesses related to the human respiratory systems. With a population of approximately 9 million people, the area of Greater London is part of the alarming 90% of the world's population that breathes air that is above safe levels of pollution. The city government implemented this ambitious project, which has had amazing impacts beyond the environmental dimension. This shows us that it is possible to take effective action on local and global issues at the same time. In London, as elsewhere, a healthier city makes for a more equitable city through measures marketing ensure that no one is left behind and a priority focus on creating safer air around the schools and low-income communities.
In April 2019, we launched the world's first 24-hour ultra-low emission zone, or the ULEZ, as we call it.
What it requires is vehicles to meet a minimum emission standard, otherwise they will have to pay a daily charge if you don't meet the required emission standards. This is part of a wider package of measures, so we've cleaned up the bus fleet, we've also put in place strict new requirements for newly licensed taxis to reduce their emissions. And overall, we also want to make sure that we're encouraging more walking and cycling.
It's also going to help reduce carbon emissions and help address the climate emergency in London.
And so really the ultra-low emission zone is about making those that pollute have to pay. And then the money that's raised from that, which is fairly substantial, can then be put back into improving community amenities.
And individuals can't do much about their own exposure to air pollution, so we need these kind of citywide, government-backed initiatives to make positive changes.
And one of the most important things going forward is to ensure that the policies and actions that we do on air pollution and climate change work together. We need to do this critically for our future and for the future of our children.
London's ultra-low emission zone provides clear proof that efforts to tackle the climate emergency and reduce air pollution cannot be separated from the struggles for social and racial justice. The truth is, these goals go hand in hand because in London, as in many other cities around the world, it's our poorest citizens who own the fewest cars who are being hit the hardest by air pollution and who'll bear the brunt of the climate crisis. It's also the case that Londoners from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds are being disproportionately impacted by air pollution. This means that attempts to bring down our emissions and clean up our air are fundamental to advancing the cause of social and racial justice, not just in London, but around the world.
Hello, I'm thrilled to be introducing the finalists from Rosario, Argentina. This project brings together many of the core themes that we need to accomplish over the next 20 years for cities. New green space, environmental concerns, adaptation, all brought together in a way that allowed this city to increase food production, increase density, and improve the lives of the disadvantaged within its boundaries. It did so by reimagining green spaces as agricultural production in a very organized and thoughtful way that instead of creating gentrification, created food and jobs.
Y ahí nosotros aprendimos que hay un montón de tierras vacantes y si nosotros los podíamos ocupar para hacer huerta, en este caso parque huerta, y transformar esos lugares que antes estaban, como no se podían urbanizar, estaban, digamos, con basura, se transformaron hoy en pequeños paraísos que hay en distintos lugares de la ciudad.
Y nosotros trabajamos y a través de la municipalidad canalizamos nuestras ventas. Tenemos 3 bocas de venta. Tenemos ferias, entonces tenemos pedidos de bolsones y entonces llevamos nuestros bolsones. Pero por sobre todas las cosas, nosotros consumimos.
Los alimentos agroecológicos en muchas aristas. No estamos hablando solo de lo nutricional, no estamos hablando, digamos, de lo estético, estamos hablando de manejo de la biodiversidad, del ambiente, de lo social, de qué producimos.
Son áreas que pueden moderar el tema del clima por ser áreas que son áreas verdes, áreas que absorben calor y también por la captación que hacen de dióxido de carbono.
Yo creo que hay un debate de futuro que va a cobrar todavía más fuerza, que es cómo combinamos la generación de empleos con la sustentabilidad. La sustentabilidad en términos ambientales, pero también la sustentabilidad en términos sociales.
La producción local de alimentos es una estrategia clave para enfrentar el cambio climático y la desigualdad social. En primer lugar, porque garantizar a nuestras poblaciones el acceso a alimentos de calidad es una necesidad esencial, tal como COVID nos lo ha demostrado y como el cambio climático sigue desafiándonos. Por otra parte, la producción agroecológica en huertas urbanas y periurbanas nos permite reverdecer las ciudades, generar empleo, acceder a alimentos con una menor huella de carbono y hacer que nuestros territorios sean más resilientes frente a los embates del cambio climático. La producción agroecológica de alimentos en huertos urbanos y periurbanos es una oportunidad de poner en marcha modelos socioproductivos más justos y amigables con el ambiente.
I'm going to take you back to March of this year. That was decision day. That was when the decision was made as to who would be the recipient for the Prize for Cities Award 2021. So it was March and it took 4 hours. All of the jury got together online, of course, and ahead of time they were given a 60-page set of documents to prepare. And the global lead for Prize for Cities, Anne, said, I know they read them. You can tell when somebody hasn't read the homework. So all the jury had read this 60-page dossier, preparing them for the finalists and which ones should be going through to the final. And they ranked their favorites ahead of time. All of the rankings were different. There wasn't a front runner. And then, you know what they had to do? Roll up their metaphorical sleeves and then start debating. Which project were they passionate about? Which one really merges climate change and inequality together? Which one is transformative? And this went on for hours and hours and hours and hours until everybody eventually was happy with the final decision. Which brings me now to the announcement for the grand prize.
Hi, I'm Stephen Ross, and I'm glad you joined us today for the Ross Center Prize for Cities. When we first set up this prize in 2018, we were looking to learn what people were doing around the world and reward them for their great innovation so people around the world could learn from the experiences that are occurring today. What we didn't know and we could not have anticipated is just how crucial this work of urban transformation and inclusivity would impact the world today. And this is something that we've seen in New York City and throughout the entire world.
The finalists not only show us what's possible when we address climate and equity together, they offer deep insights into resilience, which is more important than ever. It is awe-inspiring to learn how the finalists and others are repurposing their networks and reimagining their strategies this past year. All the finalists are winners. I had the opportunity to see the jury's deliberation, and I can say that selecting one grand prize winner was a very difficult task indeed.
Now is my great privilege to announce the grand prize winner, which is Rosario, Argentina, their program for sustainable food production. Congratulations, Rosario, on winning this grand prize and also on winning the Grand Prize Money Award.
The urban agriculture program stood out for many reasons: its vision, innovation, benefits for the poor, and the ripple effects beyond the city. Beyond the climate benefits of converting urban land to agriculture, the program has created a culture of sustainability, where people are not only conscious of what they eat, but where the food comes from, how it's made, and how the land itself is treated. Rosario demonstrates the power of responding to a crisis with a low-cost chain that has tangible impact on people's lives. By converting underused land and training people to grow food, the city took control of a crisis and laid the groundwork for the future. The program made the city greener and more livable. It offered climate benefits, flood protection, job creation, and of course, access to healthy local food. By bringing sustainability, resilience, and economic development together, Rosario achieved inclusive transformation for the whole city. What an inspiring example of what's possible.
Muchísimas gracias de corazón de parte de todo Rosario por este premio. Quiero desde ya felicitar a todas las instituciones con las cuales participamos de esta iniciativa. Nuestra producción de alimentos agroecológicos es una política pública que recibe este premio con orgullo en el año que cumplimos 20 años de política pública sostenida. Entenderlo ahora más que nunca, y lo estamos viendo en estos días, que tenemos que cambiar nuestra forma de relacionarnos con la naturaleza. Quiero agregar y terminar diciendo que nuestra experiencia muestra que esto es posible, que este impulso nos va a generar un aceleramiento del programa y que apostamos a que cada vez más seamos las ciudades que apostemos a la agricultura urbana, que entendamos la producción local y sustentable de alimentos en su impacto social y en su impacto ambiental de la manera más comprensiva.
Pablo, congratulations and the warmest congratulations for all of us for this fantastic achievement by City of Rosario, by you and your team to win this very important prize. When you became a mayor, you had many poor projects, including this one, and now you've started a climate change project. Can you share with us, Pablo, what does this particular project, urban agriculture, means for City of Rosario?
El paisaje de la ciudad se ha transformado. Primero, porque terrenos muy degradados se han convertido en lugares de producción de alimentos. Segundo, porque ese terreno se ha transformado a partir de familias que trabajan la tierra, que van incorporando saberes ancestrales, que van trabajando en su parcela, pero colaborando con el otro. O sea, hay un espíritu cooperativo fundamental en cada una de las huertas. En tercer término, porque la ciudad se ha llenado de ferias de comercialización de estos productos. Una cosa muy importante también es entender que nuestras ciudades van a tener que pensar cómo el uso del suelo frente a los cambios de temperatura y frente a los aumentos de precipitaciones nos permite protegernos, mitigar ese cambio climático y que ese suelo se convierta en productivo, que no se degrade, que permita trabajar en la absorción de lluvia, que haya sombra, porque en toda esta cadena de 20 años Esto tiene rostros, tiene caras, familias. Vengo de recorrer hace un ratito una zona con Tomás, una productora desde el primer momento. Eso es todo lo que nos ha generado este programa de agricultura urbana en la ciudad de Rosario.
Pablo, that is really very inspiring. If you step back from Rosario, what advice would you have to others who want to spark the similar change across the world in their own cities?
Yo creo que este es un tiempo donde vamos a necesitar mucha imaginación. Muchas de las ideas verticales, muchas de las cuestiones que nosotros creíamos encontrar en algún manual, hoy están en duda, zozobra. Y frente a eso, hay que escuchar. Esa es una primera recomendación, escuchar mucho. Permitir la participación, apostar a esa participación y escuchar mucho. Lo segundo es sostener en el tiempo las políticas. Una política que piense en la planificación de nuestras ciudades de mejor manera, de forma más amigable con el ambiente, en la movilidad, en su producción, en el uso de su suelo, en la mitigación del cambio climático, va a requerir tiempo, sostenimiento en el tiempo. Entender que la armonía con la naturaleza tiene que ser parte fundamental de nuestra planificación urbana. Los espacios públicos, cómo ampliamos esos espacios públicos, cómo le permitimos a nuestra gente disfrutar de esos espacios, caminar, respirar, tener buenos árboles, tener sombra, tener lugares que nos permitan coexistir con la naturaleza, nos van a mejorar una cultura fundamental, pero no hay urgencia mayor hoy que la de construir políticas sostenibles en relación al cambio climático a nivel mundial. Nuestra generación va a ser juzgada por lo que hagamos en relación al cambio climático. Y sobre todo, vamos a ser sin duda la generación de la pandemia del COVID-19. Y superar una pandemia tiene que encontrarnos en un escenario de mayor sabiduría. Y la sabiduría se adquiere cuando entendemos que muchas de las cosas que veníamos haciendo no producen resultados que podamos manejar.
Pablo, thank you so much. Thank you for the reflection and the encouragement. I'm sure we're going to see hundreds of cities inspired by you and embracing urban agriculture. Really want to thank you and congratulate to you and your fantastic team. I hope we can be together sometime soon to celebrate. But thank you and congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Virtual audience, you are the best. There is something very special about being able to connect with you all around the world. Let me give you an example of what you're sharing right now. Phenomenal initiatives all around. I am tearing with inspiration. That's not me. That's from the audience. Thank you so much. I get that. Outstanding examples, easily replicable in many countries. Our finalists are doing the work. They are changing the cities. They are changing lives. And the winners, all of us in these cities, all of our citizens around the world who are impacted by these urban transformations, we all win because we're all taking along with these projects. So let's hear from our finalists one more time.
My name is David Garza. I live in Monterrey, Mexico.
My name is Sadiq Khan. I'm the Mayor of London.
My name is Regina Opondo. I live in Nairobi, Kenya.
Mi nombre es Daniela Mastrangelo.
Mi nombre es Raúl Terrile. Vivo en la ciudad de Rosario.
My name is Bijal Brahmat and I live in the city of Ahmedabad.
I'm changing my city by working with amazing people and communities across Kibera and KDI to build productive public spaces in forgotten, underserved and under-resourced places.
I envision a future in which my city is the space in which engagement between neighbors is generated and encounters are held to detonate transformative initiatives for the benefit of society.
I envision a future in which my city manages urbanization so that there is integration between caste and class. It is inclusive, and the voices of the last mile are heard.
Estoy colaborando a cambiar mi ciudad, promoviendo la producción y el consumo de alimentos agroecológicos y haciendo un aprovechamiento productivo de los residuos urbanos que se producen en la misma.
We're working to build a future where our city is cleaner, greener, fairer and more prosperous.
Imagino el futuro en mi ciudad pleno de huertas y espacios verdes donde se produzcan alimentos para toda la población.
Like Londoners across our city, I'm an urban changemaker.
I am an urban changemaker.
Soy un transformador urbano.
I am an urban changemaker.
Soy una transformadora urbana.
I am an urban changemaker.
Anne Musson is the global lead for the WRI Ross Center Prize for Cities Awards. And you have seen her. She's been in the comment section talking back to you, telling you about all of the projects. She said this: we wanted to draw attention to the fact that a lot of good things happen in cities and are happening in cities right now. I think in the last 1 hour, we just proved exactly that. Thank you for being part of our awards ceremony. We really appreciate you. You can continue the conversation at #PrizeForCities. Thank you to our jury. Thank you to all of the finalists. And I'm going to leave you with one more thought about what is possible. We can all be urban change makers. You have been watching the WRI Ross Prize for Cities Awards 2021. Thank you. Take care.